Bloody Benders were this notorious family out in Labette County, Kansas, back in the early 1870s. Picture this: John Bender, his wife Elvira, their son John Jr., and daughter Kate, all running a little general store and inn. But here's the catch. That cozy little setup was just a front for some real sinister stuff. They were smack dab on the Osage Trail. Prime real estate for catching travelers off guard. Their whole game was pretty slick. They'd welcome travelers in, offering a warm meal and a bed, but with a deadly twist. They had this table set up right over a trapdoor that led straight to the basement. One of the Benders, hiding behind a curtain, would then knock the guest out cold with a hammer, or worse. Next thing, the poor souls dropped through the trapdoor. And that's where the horror really began. They'd rob them, bury their bodies out in the orchard. Sometimes, things got even more gruesome. Folks started noticing a lot of people were disappearing around that area. By spring 1873, the local community was on edge and decided to form a search party. They even invited the Benders to a town meeting to talk about these missing folks. By the time they decided to check out the Bender place, the family had hightailed it out of there. When the search party finally got to the Benders Inn, it was deserted. They found the bloody trapdoor, but no bodies at first. Digging around the property, though, they unearthed a gruesome scene in the orchard. At least 11 bodies, all brutally murdered. Despite a massive manhunt and ongoing investigations, the Benders slipped through the cracks. There were plenty of rumors and supposed sightings, but nothing solid. Their fate is one of those great American mysteries, turning them into these almost mythical figures of the Wild West's dark side. The story of the Bloody Benders isn't just some tale from the past. It's a stark reminder of the dangers lurking in the less controlled, sparsely populated frontiers. It highlights the struggles of law enforcement back then, with isolated communities and slow communication, making it tough to keep tabs on criminals. Their legacy endures in true crime and folklore, sparking books, articles, and films exploring what drove them to such extreme violence. The mystery of what became of them keeps people hooked, adding to the Wild West's infamy. Their sudden disappearance adds to the intrigue, leaving us with all sorts of theories about their fate, but without hard evidence. The truth about the Bloody Benders will probably stay buried. Their story touches on deep themes like trust and community betrayal. They exploited the very essence of frontier hospitality, turning it into a weapon against unsuspecting travelers. Their deeds cast a long shadow of betrayal and caution that lingered in the communities they preyed upon. Today, the Bloody Benders serve as a grim reminder of the evil that can hide behind a friendly facade. Their saga is a cautionary tale, emphasizing the need for vigilance and cooperation to protect against those intent on harm. It's a dark chapter in the story of America's frontier, reflecting the untamed landscape's dangers and the depths of human violence and deceit. In the heart of summer 2007, the city of Dnepropetrovsk, Ukraine, became the backdrop for a series of chilling and brutal crimes that would etch the name of the Dnepropetrovsk Maniacs into the annals of infamy. Viktor Sayenko and Igor Suprunyuk, both 19, along with Alexander Hanja, embarked on a killing spree that left 21 people dead and an entire nation reeling in horror. The trio, friends since school, began their descent into violence with petty theft and escalated into one of the most gruesome series of murders in recent history. Their victims, chosen at random, spanned the spectrum of society: children on their way to school, elderly people taking their usual morning walks, men and women simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. The randomness and brutality of the attacks spread a wave of fear throughout the community. Armed with hammers, metal bars, and other blunt objects, Sayenko and Suprunyuk would approach their victims under the guise of everyday encounters. What followed was a nightmare. They bludgeoned their victims to death, often inflicting post-mortem wounds. The sheer brutality suggested not just a lack of empathy, but a deep-seated cruelty and a desire to exert control over life and death. Perhaps the most horrifying aspect of their spree was their decision to record some of their murders, creating videos that would later become evidence of their atrocities. One video, infamously known as 3 Guys, 1 Hammer, depicted the murder of 48-year-old Sergei Yatsenko, leaked online, became a viral sensation, drawing international attention and adding a perverse layer of notoriety to their crimes. The motives behind these heinous acts remain partially shrouded in mystery. Investigations suggested a mix of thrill-seeking, a perverse desire for fame, and a twisted sense of superiority and power over their victims. During their trial, snippets of their psychology were revealed, including their disdain for human life and the rush they felt with each kill. The capture of the Dnepropetrovsk Maniacs was as dramatic as their crimes. After a widespread investigation, authorities arrested the trio in July 2007, barely a month after their first murder. The evidence against them was overwhelming, including the video recordings, witness testimonies, and forensic evidence. The trial that followed was a media circus, drawing attention from around the world. In 2009, Suprunyuk and Sayenko received life sentences for their roles in the murders, while Hanja, who was involved in the robberies but not the killings, received a 9-year prison sentence. The verdicts brought some measure of closure to a terrified and baffled nation, but the scars left by the Dnepropetrovsk Maniacs' killing spree remain. The Dnepropetrovsk Maniacs story is a stark reminder of the depths to which humanity can sink. It raises uncomfortable questions about the nature of evil, the allure of violence in the digital age, and the factors that can drive young men to commit unspeakable acts. Their legacy is a cautionary tale about the darkness that can lurk behind the most mundane of facades, a darkness that, once unleashed, can consume lives and communities in its wake. All right, let's dive into the chilling tale of the monster of Miramichi, a story that shook the very core of New Brunswick, Canada, and left a lasting mark on the community. Our story unfolds in the late 1980s, in the serene and picturesque Miramichi region, known for its friendly folks and laid-back way of life. But all that changed when Allan Legere broke out of prison in May 1989. Legere wasn't just any inmate. He was already serving a life sentence for the murder of a store owner in the small town of Chatham, a part of the Miramichi area. His escape turned a quiet community into the hunting ground of a monster. Legere's escape wasn't just a fluke. It was like something out of a horror movie. He had been transferred to a hospital in Moncton for treatment, and there, he managed a daring escape, setting the stage for a reign of terror that would last for months. The monster of Miramichi was on the loose. He was about to unleash a nightmare that the people of this region could never have imagined. As autumn leaves turned to gold and the nights grew longer, a wave of unspeakable violence swept across Miramichi. Legere, using the cover of darkness, began a series of brutal attacks, breaking into homes, assaulting, and murdering residents. His crimes were not just violent, they were calculated to instill fear and chaos in the community. People were afraid to leave their homes. An eerie silence descended on the once bustling streets of Miramichi. The police were on high alert, launching one of the largest manhunts in Canadian history. But Legere was elusive, blending into the shadows and always seeming to be one step ahead. The community rallied together, taking precautions and looking out for one another. But the fear was palpable. The monster of Miramichi had turned their safe haven into a place of terror. Legere's reign of terror culminated in a series of particularly heinous crimes in November 1989. He broke into the home of an elderly priest, Father James Smith, brutally murdering him. This act of violence against a beloved community figure was the final straw, galvanizing law enforcement and the community to bring Legere to justice. Finally, after months of fear and uncertainty, the nightmare came to an end. On November 24th, 1989, Allan Legere was captured, thanks to the combined efforts of the community, law enforcement, and a bit of luck. His capture brought a collective sigh of relief to the Miramichi region, but the scars of those dark months would linger. Legere was brought to trial, where he faced justice for his crimes. He was convicted of multiple murders and sentenced to life in prison, where he remains to this day. The monster of Miramichi's reign of terror was over, but the story of his capture and the resilience of the Miramichi community has become a tale of caution, sorrow, and ultimately, strength. The story of the monster of Miramichi serves as a grim reminder of the capacity for evil in the world, but also of the power of a community to come together in the face of unimaginable fear. It's a story that's been told and retold, a warning from the past that even in the most idyllic places, monsters can hide in the shadows. But it's also a testament to the indomitable spirit of the people of Miramichi, who faced down a monster and reclaimed their community.